Hello and welcome to a Signet presentation, Fire Alarm, The Next Generation, a review of UL 268 7th edition and LED notification appliances. My name is Kevin Wilhelm and I am a solutions architect at Signet Electronic Systems Inc. Thank you for joining me today and I look forward to a productive webinar. Founded in 1974, Signet Electronic Systems Inc. designs, installs, and services integrated building solutions. Areas of expertise include healthcare communications, life safety, integrated security, audiovisual, and critical communications. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to a productive webinar. Today's discussion will cover a basic overview of what UL 268 7th edition is, and how Underwriter Laboratories, also known as UL, helped to develop it. I also go over what a notification appliance is, what is being used for current notification appliance solutions, and how LED technology has greatly enhanced the ability of integrators like Signet to provide advanced solutions for fire alarm needs. Signet is an EST strategic partner. EST is a fire alarm brand, also known as Edwards Systems Technologies, and we're very lucky because EST has taken great leadership in both LED notification appliances and compliance with UL 268 7th edition. This means that Signet and other EST strategic partners are uniquely prepared for some of the changes going on in the industry, and I think we're really lucky to be able to offer these solutions to our clients. So what is UL 268 7th edition? It's a standard for safety of smoke detectors for fire alarm systems. That means smoke detectors specifically tied to larger fire alarm control panels with monitor modules, pull stations, and then various types of notification appliances. These aren't smoke detectors that are powered by 120 volts or maybe in your household. These are meant more for commercial and large residential applications. So smoke detectors are tested by UL to determine that they meet these standards and will perform appropriately. UL works as an independent certifier. They've worked with NFPA and NIST, which is the National Institute for Testing, to develop standards, and then they take smoke detectors created by manufacturers, put them in a lab, and ensure that they will meet the UL standards. If the detector is not properly listed by UL, it can be deemed illegal and not be allowed to be used. The 7th edition is relatively new. The standard was certified in September 2018, and compliance is required by manufacturers by May 29th, 2020. So, UL acts as an independent testing agency for smoke detectors. That's great. It's wonderful that they make these standards, but why the sudden change? Well, UL did some research, and a lot of their standards go back to the 1970s. They discovered that average safe egress times have decreased substantially. In the 1970s, when they first implemented it, it was about 17 minutes that people had to be able to evacuate a space before the smoke and the fire would potentially overcome them. Well, a lot has changed since the 1970s. We don't use shag carpet anymore, and we're using a lot more open floor plans and synthetic materials. And that may be great for the environment, great for cost, and personally I like an open floor plan. But the problem is that egress time has decreased from 17 minutes to 3 minutes. And they realized, wow, we need to do a better job of detecting fires. And one of the things they identified was polyurethane foam. If you've ever looked at a tag and seen PU, all caps, PU leather, PU this, PU that, that's a polyurethane foam. It's a synthetic material. It's used frequently in furniture, including couches and rugs, chairs. It's in a phenomenal number of things when you start to look. And it's great. It's a very cheap material. It's very light. It's very comfortable. It's very, long lasting. But from a fire alarm perspective, it's a common fuel source for fires. It's extremely fast burning, but the particulate that it outputs is very, very small in diameter. And UL did testing and realized, wow, the amount of time we're taking to detect this type of particulate in a fire condition is far too long. Longer than wood, longer than almost every other type of particulate that would likely to occur in a fire. It has one of the lowest levels of obscuration. What I mean by that is obscuration is what a smoke detector looks at. So there's a little eye in a smoke detector, and it passes light from one side to the other. And as it's blocked, I'm being blocked. I should go into alarm because there's probably smoke and particulate in the air. And the problem is because the particulate produced by the polyurethane foam was so small physically that it wasn't creating obscuration levels high enough to go into alarm until far too long. Once again, this is a very fast burning with a lot of high heat in its fire. And it just wasn't alarming fast enough. So they realized, wow, we need to change how we're testing these smoke detectors and make it a priority that polyurethane foam is detected accurately and quickly. That way we can increase the notification. And even though escape times can be low, if people are being alerted fast enough, they can still get out of. So that's great. We identified a need to increase the speed of detection. They looked at what was going on and realized, hey, we need to increase the speed, especially for polyurethane foam. Okay, great. But part of the reason that people are intentionally disabling their smoke detectors is because they believe they're too sensitive. People are taking their smoke detection and covering it, pulling it down, unplugging it, or otherwise hampering it. This is because of something called nuisance alarms. A nuisance alarm is the smoke detector going into alarm because of conditions it's seeing and believing to be a fire based on the particulate in the air, but the individual in the space would not be. The great example was someone cooking. In fact, UL did a study. 73% of all nuisance alarms were caused by cooking. So UL thought, hey, what if we actually understand what type of cooking specifically is causing these nuisance alarms and are able to develop a test that makes sure that that type of nuisance alarm won't occur. That's a great way to match up with the enhanced speed of detection, is to increase the accuracy. So this is really tough if you think about it, right? You're trying to increase the speed of detection and accuracy at the same time. So what UL did is they reached to NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, and NIST, who handles testing, to develop a standard specifically for testing and specifically related to cooking nuisance alarms. So they created what's called the Burger Test. The Burger Test increased the robustness of detection relates to cooking-related particulate. And by that I mean detectors are more able to reject particulate from normal cooking or even slightly burning cooking. They looked at the most common cooking-related nuisance alarms: toasting bread, pan-frying hamburger, broiling hamburger, and identified the types of particulate and the rate of particulate that was created by those actions. In fact, all existing smoke detectors went into alarm when someone was broiling a hamburger near the smoke detector and had a way that generated a lot of particulate relative to your typical broiling of a hamburger. So if you were doing it and had the window open and proper exhaust, you wouldn't have an alarm. But if you broiled the hamburger right underneath a smoke detector and really, really broiled it in a way that a lot of the fats and juices were cooking into it, every smoke detector on the market would have gone into alarm. So they created a new standard, and as a part of it, smoke detectors will now be able to reject all of these. So where before not a single smoke detector was able to realize that, hey, this is a normal cooking action and I shouldn't go into alarm based off of it, now every smoke detector that meets the UL 268 7th edition standard will be able to reject these and understand that, hey, this is a normal amount and type of particulate that comes from cooking. And the way they did that is they honestly cooked a bunch of food. They put smoke detectors around it, and they really got a good understanding of the type of particulate that these actions create, and then worked with manufacturers to identify ways that they can be rejected. So anything passing the standard will be able to reject this. So I've talked about how the new UL standards and the Burger test and new types of smoke detection are part of the next generation. Earlier, I also mentioned that there's been a great change in audiovisual devices. So an audiovisual device is the part of a fire alarm system utilized for notification. And by that I mean there's been an alarm and there's something that goes off and either makes a horn noise or provides some sort of audio messaging to alert people to evacuate the building, shelter in place, or some combination of the above. So I did a basic description of what a notification appliance circuit looks like. The little S circle is a smoke detector, kind of like how we talked about previously. The FACP is the main fire alarm panel. That handles all the logic between the inputs and the outputs. An input is a smoke detector, a heat detector, some sort of sprinkler device. And the output would be communication to central station, and then also the notification appliance circuit. So frequently there's what's called a booster power supply that's utilized to support a large number of these audiovisual devices because all of them take power to activate and cause their element to flash. The little squares and rectangles are the actual notification appliances themselves, and they are actually run somewhat similar to that. They're typically run in series with a number on each circuit depending on how many devices there are. So the circuit is a big limitation because of the power draw. It's actually not so much the total power draw as it is the voltage drop issue. So voltage drop is a common term in fire alarm. What it means is each device has a certain amount of resistance, and that resistance is typically related to the candela setting. Candela is the brightness. So think about you have different wattage lamps. You know, if you get a 100 watt bulb, it's typically brighter than a 50 watt. Notification appliances are measured in candela, and they vary from 15 candela at the bright to 177 candela and maybe a few others at the brightest side. And the brighter you go, the more power it draws. So if you had those four devices and they were set at the lowest setting, you could run that cable maybe a couple thousand feet. But if you had those four devices all set at 177 candela, maybe you can only run it a couple hundred feet. That can be a problem when you're talking about large open areas, parking garages, or big warehouses. Other facilities where maybe you don't have a lot of electrical closets, but you can very easily end up with a lot of audiovisual devices and a need. So here I have my basic little drawing again, but it's showing the input and then the output. So in this case, I have a single smoke detector. It is detected at alarm condition, and it is causing all the audiovisual devices to activate. As an aside, it's not always the case that all audiovisual devices in a building will activate together. There's what's called total evac and then partial evac. So if you have a 40 or a 50 story building and you have a mostly contained fire on the third floor, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have the people on the 40th floor walk down all those flights of stairs. So in that situation, you only have the floor above, floor below, and floor of incidents get a notification that there is a fire condition unless the fire department gets there or another authority having jurisdiction and determines that there should be a evacuation of the space. So a couple things of note. The flashing of the strobes is very particular. It's not just like hitting a light switch on and off or the bottom of a flashlight. Strobes have to flash in a particular pattern and be synchronized. And the reason is, if the strobes are not properly synchronized, it can cause seizures, which is obviously a very bad situation. Just imagine you're trying to cause an evacuation of a space because there's a fire or other condition, and you're giving someone who has epilepsy a seizure. It's certainly not an ideal situation. The reason why you have the strobes is because you could have people who are hearing impaired. So they're not hearing the horn sound going off. They're not hearing the audio messaging portion. You put strobes in a variety of areas so that these people can still see that there's a notification and that they should be evacuating the space. Once again, the historical way it was done is a flashing strobe, and you have a couple on a circuit, and there's all this power draw from it. The exciting thing that Edwards has done is come out with a new product that is easier to use, easier to install, and has a lot less draw while also giving all the same great performance that you need. All the performance is mandated by UL and NFPA. A manufacturer can't go out there and just say, hey, you know what, I don't really care what the brightness should be. I just want a low draw. I'm not going to be as bright. I'm not going to be as loud. I'm not going to be as intelligent in my audio messaging. So everyone is held to that really high standard. And EST has found a way to meet that standard while drastically reducing the amount of power draw. And it's a big deal because when I'm a designer and I'm laying out a system, I'm thinking about, how far I have to run cable all the time. Because I'm thinking, if I mix these circuits up in a certain manner, I'm going to be over distance and I'll be concerned about the system working properly. By reducing that, it makes it a lot easier for me as a designer perspective to meet appropriate survivability requirements while also reducing costs to the end user and making it easier for myself and our technicians in the field. So this is what the older style and the newer style actually look like. The older style, the part number just for reference, is a G1RF-HDVM. It was very well made, very slim, and it's tough to tell from the picture. Because that image has it with an optional trim plate, but it's physically very small, so it was aesthetically pleasing when it came out. If you've ever felt the plastic on it, it's a very solid piece of equipment. Down at the bottom is the older technology. That's a xenon strobe. And up top, if you'll see, there's the little running man. So the little running man was created as kind of a way to make it clear in a variety of languages that when that product is activating, people should evacuate. Hasn't really caught on, to be honest with you, and they're getting rid of it for the new generation, but I always liked it, and I thought it was kind of a nice little touch. But once again, that was a great product for a long time. Thousands and thousands and thousands of them have been put in all throughout the world. Very, very, very reliable. Mounts very solidly, and it'll be up there and work in your building for a very long time. The new product, though, on the right is clearly an upgrade. Once again, it's physically very small. It only sticks off the wall by about an inch. So think of like a deck of cards. It's honestly not much bigger than that. Single gang back box, so very small back box, very compact. And if you notice the lighting element, which is kind of down there at the bottom, looks very different. That's because it's that LED technology as opposed to the older Xenon. One thing that EST did, though, is they invested in the LED technology, but they also improved the frequency even in the horn model. So people are complaining that the penetration on the horns was not as good as the older bells. So if you've ever been to a school and heard the bell ring, a lot of old fire alarm products utilize that bell, and the frequency that the bells ring at is very good for penetrating walls. EST adjusted the audio output of their horns to better match that level of penetration, so you don't need as many devices in a building for the audio aspect. You may still need strobes in certain locations because of the visual view, but less horns saves money and saves power draw, which I've talked about before is a big challenge when me as a designer is trying to think about how I'm going to lay out a system. Once again, it's tough from this picture to really appreciate how small it is, especially when you look at some of the competitors in the marketplace. So slim on both sides too. I've seen other products that are slim on the wall side but really sticking to the back box. And the problem with that is when you're landing your wires, then you're stuffing it back in the back box, which can lead to additional issues with grounds or frayed wires. Whereas these two are very slim on the back side. So when you mount it back to the back box, you're not shoving wires in, you're not bending wires in ways they really were not intended to, and it really reduces. If I was an electrician or a field technician, this slide would be why I would be very, very excited about this new series of AV products from EST Edwards. The way it works now is so you install an AV device in a building, screw it to a wall, and hopefully you set it up once and walk away, and hopefully it never needs to be adjusted. Problem is, you don't always know how a space is going to use or change over time. So you set it up for the low dB setting. You set it up for lower candela because you're really not expecting there to be a lot of ambient noise or a lot of exterior brightness. Well, suddenly the architect changes their mind, the owner changes their mind, and noise. There is a lot of ambient light, and the fire inspector is saying all of these devices need to be changed to a higher candela and a higher temporal setting. What you'd have to do is you'd have to pop the faceplate off, you'd have to get your screwdriver out, you'd have to unscrew it from the wall, hopefully not pull too hard on the wires because you have to worry about damaging the wires, flip these little switches on the back, put it back up, screw it back up, pop the cover back on, and then do that for potentially dozens or even hundreds of devices. The way the new product works is all those controls you see there in the left hand picture on the screen, all you need to do is pop the cover off. You don't have to take that product off the wall to adjust the candela or adjust the dB setting on it. It literally takes 5 seconds to pop that cover off and change it from 15 to 75 candela. And there's an added bonus too. So I talked about the voltage drop. Typically as you go up candela, it affects the amount of power the product is drawing, and it affects your voltage drop. So if the initial engineering documents showed all 15 candela products and the fire inspector is telling you need to change them all to 5, you can have a power draw issue where suddenly you have too much power draw and your voltage drop is too substantial, and now your system does not work and you have to rerun all your circuits in a building that it wants to open tomorrow with a fire inspector breathing down your neck. The new product, no. No matter what your candela setting is, 15, 30, 75, it does not matter. The draw from that device is the same. Once again, I mean, if you're not in this frequently, it's hard to appreciate that, but before you'd be talking about a change between 15 and 75 candela of 3 times the power draw. And I talked before that power draw as a designer is the biggest challenge that I face, so if you had a lot of devices suddenly going up in their power draw 3 times, it changes your entire circuiting layout. You could go from being able to run a 12 gauge wire 1,000 feet to 400 feet. And if that building is almost done, if that circuit is already run, it's a bad situation to be in. This new product takes care of that. You do not have that issue. 15 candela, 30, 75, whatever you want does not change the draw. It's incredible, honestly, from a design perspective, because it gives me so much flexibility later on if they need to make changes based on site conditions. I've mentioned before that circuiting is very important and that grounds are a challenge in new construction. Everyone faces it. Before, the way you would test for grounds is you'd have to activate the devices or get out your meter and start pulling down devices. The new product, in the right picture you can kind of see it, there's the plus and the minus in these 2 little test ports. You get your meter out, pop the cover off, No screwdriver, nothing coming off the wall. You just put your meter on those two little guys right there, and you can test the integrity of the circuit. No activation of the device, no additional wire to run, no screwdriver. Test it at the device in seconds. It is a huge labor savings compared to how it's done right now. Once again, they could have just had the LED technology and it would have been great, but they really, at EST, designed a phenomenal product. So just to kind of summarize on why these new EST notification appliances matter is because of the cost savings. And EST put a lot of thought into this new product. So they realized that most customers don't want to change over all of their existing products. And once again, that G1 RF HDVM, there are thousands and thousands of them out there because they're very reliable and EST makes great products in time. So EST recognized this and figured out how to make the new devices, the LED ones, synchronize with the old Xenon devices. So I mentioned it earlier, but that synchronization is very important for ADA compliance. Because if the products aren't synchronized, they can cause seizures, which is very bad. So if you're doing a renovation of a space, even just a couple offices, you can get all these benefits of the new AV devices without having to replace every other device in the circuit, every other device in your building. It allows for not even a phased approach, but just every time you need a replacement, you're getting the benefits of the newer technology. Once again, just to summarize, the benefits are it's smaller, it's more efficient, that power draw is just so much lower. Once again, as a designer, it's hard for me to be any clearer that it gives me a lot more flexibility in my circuiting. Lets me really centralize equipment, which for troubleshooting is very important. If you're having to put booster power supplies all throughout a building, it means that hopefully you've got good and your technicians have a good memory to remember what circuits are powered off which booster. If you have all those boosters centralized, it's a lot easier to start troubleshooting. And the reason why you sometimes don't centralize them was because of the distance and the voltage drop. Well, now that voltage drop is lower, you can run the cable longer at a smaller gauge, and you get those benefits of having centralized equipment for troubleshooting. So that's where the efficiency is important. The flexibility, once again, no matter what the setting is on the product, 15, 30, 75, it's the same power draw. So you get the benefits of the longer circuit running without having to worry that if I go up from 15 to 30, I'm going to have to rerun cable. You just don't. The product is so incredible that whatever setting you have it at will work. As long as that initial calculation is correct, no change you're going to make in the field based on different conditions is going to cause an issue. Really, they have looked at their product at EST, figured out what they did well, which is the reliability and the compact form factor, and enhanced it. They took the new technology of the better horn and the better strobe and added to that easier use of install and easier maintenance in the field, and created a product that I am very happy that I, Signet, get to represent. I'm very impressed with EST and their development of the new series and the rollout of the new series. I haven't had any failures. I haven't had any availability issues that can sometimes happen. No recalls, no issues with it falling off the wall, nothing like that. They really vetted their product well and ensured that when they came to market, they had a product that I, as an integrator, would want to use, and that end users would want in their system, and electricians would want to wire, and everyone would be really happy with. I'm sure there's maybe one or two things that could be better with it, but I really can't think of what they could be. Once again, the troubleshooting is improved, the field maintenance is improved, the installs improved, the physical appearance is improved, the design aspect is improved. It's a wholesale upgrade of what the previous AV devices were, and I'm really, really excited about what I can do now. Thank you for joining me. My name is Kevin Wilhelm. I am a solutions architect at Signet Electronic Systems, Inc. If you have any other questions about EST or fire alarm in general, feel free to reach out to me. My email and phone number are there on the screen. Just to summarize and kind of wrap it up, fire alarm is an industry that doesn't always change the fastest, and that's because reliability and standards and being pragmatic is such an important part of it. Innovation is great, but innovation in life safety is tricky because it's so critical that these systems work. And with the new UL standard for smoke detectors, I think UL and then EST, by adopting it early, has really done a great job. They looked at all the aspects and really considered the impact, right? So they looked at, wow, evacuation time has decreased, so we need to increase our speed of detection, but we can't then increase nuisance alarms. So they came out with a standard, they came out with a product, in EST's case, that allowed all those things to work together simultaneously. And if you had asked me before that, could you do all those things at the same time? I probably would have said it was difficult, if not impossible. Same with the new AV devices. They didn't just, we swapped out the xenon element for the LED and we saved power. Wow, we did a great job. Everyone get excited. They did that, but then said, no, that's not enough. We want to make it just a world-class, industry-leading product. So they put some of the controls on the front. Okay, great. They could have stopped there. And then they added those test boards. And I hear it all the time, what a challenge it is to test the circuiting once a product is installed in the field. So that EST really looked at that and determined that they wanted to do a better job than anyone at allowing electricians and allowing technicians to test the circuiting integrity. Just means that EST really understands what I'm going through as an integrator and what electricians are going through as installers. I really appreciate that from perspective, and I hope that people that install it really understand the time and energy that EST put into it to make this new product series and really provide something that offers a value. Once again, thank you for joining me. Feel free to reach out, and I really